Imagine this: a respected cop with a perfect family, a wife hiding a deadly secret, and an ex-lover whose presence sparks an explosive chain of events, ending in flames. This is a story of betrayal, obsession, and revenge so intense it left an entire community stunned. Trust and betrayal are two sides of the same coin. When a marriage built on lies and infidelity unravels, it can push someone to the edge of madness. What happens when the man who once held everything together becomes the one who tears it all apart? Before we dive deep into this chilling tale, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more stories that expose the darkest corners of human behavior. Officer Darnell Johnson, 34, was the embodiment of law and order in Dallas, Texas. A highly respected cop, he was known for his dedication to his job and his deep sense of duty to protect his community. His life outside of work appeared just as perfect, married to Camille Johnson, 29, a talented and successful interior designer. Together, they had built a beautiful life, complete with 2 young children, Amaya, 6, and Micah, 4. The Johnsons were the quintessential American dream family, wealthy, attractive, and living in a suburban home that seemed to shine with perfection. But beneath the polished surface, things weren't as they seemed. Darnell, though seemingly the perfect husband, began to sense a shift in Camille. Their marriage, once filled with passion and love, had started to fray at the edges. Camille, despite her professional success, was struggling with her past. A past she had hoped would stay buried, especially after the release of Andre Walker, her ex-boyfriend. Andre, 33, had been a major part of Camille's life before Darnell. A felon recently released from prison, Andre had spent years behind bars for robbery and drug charges. Despite his criminal history, he had always been able to pull Camille back into his orbit. The old feelings between them had never truly disappeared, and now, with Andre back on the streets, their past was beginning to resurface in ways that Camille couldn't control. As Darnell's hours at the police station grew longer, Camille's connection to Andre started to intensify. At first, it was innocent, a text here and there, some casual conversations. But it didn't take long before their secret meetings turned into something more, something Darnell was completely unaware of. As the cracks in their marriage grew deeper, Camille found herself torn between the man who had once been her future, and the life she had built with Darnell and their children. The perfect family portrait was slowly shattering, and neither Darnell or Camille realized just how dangerously close they were to the tipping point. Darnell, while fiercely protective of his family, had always been blind to the unspoken tension between Camille and Andre. He trusted his wife implicitly, believing her to be the devoted woman he had married. But as Camille began receiving mysterious texts, phone calls, and late-night visits from Andre, the cracks in their relationship began to widen. The once perfect family slowly descended into a spiral of distrust, guilt, and simmering anger. For Camille, the presence of Andre represented the past she could never fully escape. His shadow loomed over her marriage, poisoning the idyllic life she and Darnell had built. And as her feelings of guilt, longing, and confusion intensified, Darnell began to sense something was wrong, though he couldn't yet put his finger on it. Little did they both know, this rekindled connection with Andre would set in motion a series of events that would unravel everything they held dear, leading them into a violent, destructive path none of them could have foreseen. Andre's presence in Camille's life had slowly become impossible to ignore. His messages started out innocent enough, but they quickly spiraled into something far darker. They began with the usual flirtations, playful banter, and compliments, but soon turned into something more provocative, more personal. Andre seemed to take pleasure in pushing boundaries, sending Camille messages that left nothing to the imagination. Their encounters were often impulsive, fueled by a mix of nostalgia and unfulfilled desires. Each time they came together, it was a reminder of what she had with him before the complications of life took over. The physical passion between them was electric, but it was also laced with regret, especially as Camille grappled with the reality of her marriage and the growing tension between her love for Darnell and her lingering feelings for Andre. The sexting was relentless. At first, Camille tried to ignore it, brushing off his advances as harmless. She didn't want to hurt Darnell, but she couldn't deny the thrill she felt each time André reached out, rekindling a connection that had once been electric. The messages came at all hours, each one more explicit than the last. He sent pictures, lewd comments, and even insisted that she send him intimate photos in return. Camille's guilt weighed heavily on her, but the pull was too strong. Her silence, at first, only seemed to encourage André more. But Camille wasn't the only one noticing the messages. Darnell had become more suspicious in recent weeks. His mind was clouded by the stress of his job and his growing concerns about Camille's behavior. He'd seen the secretive way she held her phone, the way she would abruptly end a conversation whenever he entered the room. He had tried to brush it off, but now, his gut told him something was off. One evening, Camille left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to check on the kids. Darnell, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, glanced at her phone. The screen lit up with a message notification. Camille's phone buzzed with a new text from André. His heart sank as he looked at the message preview. "I can't wait to feel you again, baby. You're all I've been thinking about." Darnell's stomach twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief. He had known something was happening, but seeing it in black and white made it undeniable. His hand trembled as he picked up Camille's phone, his pulse quickening. The messages were relentless, a trail of words that he couldn't ignore any longer. With each new message, his heart shattered further. Camille had been keeping André a secret from him, and now it was clear, they were not just texting. They had started something that Darnell could no longer pretend was innocent. Unable to hold back his frustration, Darnell stormed through the house to find Camille. He wasn't sure what he was going to say, but he knew he couldn't let this go. When he found her in the living room, her back turned as she bent down to adjust Micah's toys, he held up her phone, the screen still glowing with André's latest message. His voice was a low growl of anger as he spoke. "Camille, what is this?" he demanded, his finger pointing at the phone. Camille froze, her heart racing. She had hoped, prayed, that Darnell would never find out. But now, there was no denying it. She turned slowly, trying to mask the panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Answer me, Camille." Darnell's voice was harder now, like steel being bent under pressure. His eyes searched her face, waiting for some sign of remorse or explanation. I didn't mean for it to happen, Darnell," Camille stammered, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. "It's not what you think. I didn't want it to get this far." Darnell stepped forward, grabbing her wrist before she could reach the phone. "No. I want the truth, Camille. How long has this been going on? You're still seeing him, aren't you? After everything we've built? After everything we've gone through together?" The weight of his words hit Camille like a slap in the face. She couldn't deny it. Her mind raced, trying to find a way out, but she knew there was no easy excuse. She had betrayed him, betrayed their family. And now, everything was falling apart in front of her. Darnell's eyes burned with betrayal, but something else flashed in them, something darker. His anger was shifting now, settling into something more cold and calculating. He had always trusted Camille, but this was something else. The truth, like a jagged knife, had sliced through their lives, and Darnell felt as though he was suffocating under the weight of it. "I never wanted this," Camille whispered, her voice cracking. She could feel the tears rising, but she held them back. "I never wanted to hurt you, Darnell. André, he's part of my past. I didn't think he would." "Camille," Darnell interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. "You're carrying his child, aren't you?" Camille's face went pale. Her breath caught in her throat. "How did he know?" I don't know what to say," she stammered, her eyes welling up with tears. She had hoped to keep the pregnancy a secret for just a little longer, but now there was no hiding it. The test had confirmed it just a few days ago. She was pregnant with Andre's child. Darnell's expression darkened. He stared at her for a long, heavy moment, as though trying to process the impossible. His chest tightened, and a cold, bitter feeling settled deep inside him. It wasn't just the affair that had crushed him. It was the realization that Camille had been carrying Andre's child for weeks, and he had been none the wiser. It felt like a betrayal beyond anything he could comprehend. "Get out of the room," Darnell said, his voice low and barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, more painful than any scream. Camille opened her mouth to protest, but Darnell held up his hand. "I need you to leave. Now." But Camille hesitated, which made Darnell leave the room instead. And with that, Camille was left standing in the room, broken, while Darnell turned away, the weight of her betrayal crushing both of them. The family, the life they had built, the love he thought they shared, it all seemed to crumble to dust before his eyes. The next night, Camille was sitting alone in the bedroom, her thoughts a storm of anxiety and regret. Her trembling hands hovered over her phone as she finally typed out a message to Andre: "I'm pregnant, but I'm not sure who the father is. Andre, this is a mess, and I don't know what to do." She had recently discovered it and was afraid to let anyone know because she was unsure until she finally texted Andre. He read the message with a mixture of shock and excitement. For years, he had regretted losing Camille to Darnell, blaming himself for the choices that led to her marrying someone else. He quickly responded, "I don't care whose baby it is, Camille. I'll step up for you and this child. I made so many mistakes, but I won't lose you again. You belong with me." Blinded by his desperation to win Camille back, Andre made a reckless decision. He sent a taunting message directly to Darnell. The cop was sitting in the living room when his phone buzzed. He frowned at the unknown number before opening the message. "You don't deserve her. Camille and that baby will always be mine. It's time for you to back off, Darnell." Darnell's chest tightened as rage surged through him. He immediately stormed upstairs, his heart pounding and his mind racing. He flung the bedroom door open to find Camille startled and clutching her phone. "I already knew you still talked to him. I thought you were over it, Camille. I thought you were done with Andre," Darnell said, his voice dangerously low, holding up his phone with the text. Camille froze, her face pale. "Darnell, it's not what you think," she stammered. "Not what I think?" His voice began to rise. "You've been texting him behind my back, Camille. And now he's claiming a baby? What the hell is going on?" Camille's hands shook as tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't want you to find out like this," she whispered. "Didn't want me to find out what, Camille?" he shouted. "That you're pregnant? That this might not even be my child?" "I don't know, Darnell." Camille cried, the tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm not sure whose it is. I was scared to tell you because I knew you'd react like this." Her words hit him like a sledgehammer. Darnell's face twisted with betrayal and rage as he paced the room. "So, while I'm out working to take care of this family, you've been entertaining this clown? Letting him think he can come in here and claim my family?" Camille broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen, Darnell. He's just trying to mess with you. I told him I don't want anything to do with him." But Darnell wasn't hearing her. His mind raced with anger and heartbreak. He stormed across the room, grabbed her by the arm, and dragged her toward the kid's bedroom. She screamed and struggled, but he didn't loosen his grip. "Darnell, let go. Please," she begged, but he shoved her into the children's room, where Amaya and Micah were playing with their toys. "Mommy, what's wrong?" 6-year-old Amaya asked, her big eyes wide with fear. "Stay here." Darnell barked, his voice sharp as he locked the door from the outside. "Darnell, stop this. Let us out," Camille yelled, banging on the door. 4-year-old Micah began crying, clinging to Camille's leg. "Mommy, why is Daddy mad?" "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here," Camille said, trying to sound calm, though her voice was shaking. Darnell stormed into the garage, grabbed a gas canister, and began pouring gasoline all over the house. The pungent smell filled the air as he moved methodically, drenching every corner. Inside the locked room, Amaya held her little brother tightly as they watched their mother frantically try to open the window. "Mommy, I'm scared," Amaya whispered. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just stay with me," Camille said, tears streaming down her face as she struggled to pry the window open. Darnell returned to the hallway, striking a match and staring at the tiny flame as it flickered in his hand. His voice was low and cold as he muttered, "If I can't have my family, no one will." He dropped the match, and the flames erupted instantly, consuming the house with terrifying speed. The fire roared to life, spreading quickly and engulfing everything in its path. Inside the room, the children screamed as smoke began to seep under the door. Camille covered their faces with a blanket, trying to shield them from the thickening air. "Stay low. Don't breathe the smoke," she cried, her voice breaking. The flames reached the children's room, and the doorknob grew red-hot. Camille's desperate attempts to break the window failed as the heat intensified. Amaya clung to her mother, sobbing, while Micah buried his face in her lap, trembling. Outside, their neighbor David noticed the flames and called 911. "The Johnsons' house is on fire. I think they're inside," he yelled, panic in his voice. By the time firefighters arrived, the house had collapsed into a smoldering heap. As they sifted through the rubble, they discovered the charred remains of Darnell, Camille, and their 2 children. The once picture-perfect family had been reduced to ashes, their lives destroyed by secrets, betrayal, and one man's unrelenting rage. The aftermath of the Johnson family tragedy sent shockwaves through the community. News of the fire spread quickly, with headlines screaming about the horrific murder-suicide orchestrated by Officer Darnell Johnson. Neighbors, friends, and colleagues who once admired the family for their picture-perfect image were left stunned and heartbroken. David, the neighbor who had called 911, could barely speak as he recounted the events. "I saw the flames, I heard the screams. I just wish I could have done something to save them," he told reporters, his voice choked with emotion. Investigators combed through the ashes, piecing together the horrifying sequence of events. Forensic teams confirmed that all 4 members of the Johnson family had perished in the fire. Evidence of the gasoline and the charred remains of a matchbook near Darnell's body painted a clear picture of premeditation. The investigation quickly revealed Darnell as the perpetrator. When authorities examined the remains, they discovered that Camille and the children had been locked inside the kids' room, while Darnell's body was found in the living room near the remnants of the matchbook and gasoline canister. This arrangement left no doubt that he had orchestrated the fire, though his exact motive remained a mystery to everyone but one man. As authorities uncovered more details, Darnell's colleagues at the Dallas Police Department were forced to confront the unsettling reality of the man they thought they knew. "He was a dedicated officer, a pillar of the community," said Chief Lionel Matthews during a press conference. "We never imagined he was struggling with such inner turmoil. It's a tragedy that no one saw coming." Andre Walker was consumed by shock and guilt as the news broke. Though the authorities couldn't uncover what had pushed Darnell over the edge, Andre knew deep down that his taunting text messages, especially the one claiming the unborn baby as his, had provoked Darnell's deadly rage. In private, Andre wrestled with the weight of his role in the tragedy, though he denied responsibility to anyone who questioned him. The unanswered questions about Darnell's exact state of mind that night only deepened the community's grief and confusion. The children's deaths were the most difficult to comprehend for the community. Amaya and Micah were described as bright, joyful kids who lit up every room they entered. Their school organized a memorial service, where teachers and classmates tearfully shared stories about their laughter, curiosity, and love for life. Betrayal can cut deeper than any blade, but for Darnell Johnson, it ignited a fire that consumed everything in its path. This harrowing tale is a grim reminder of how jealousy, secrets, and unbridled rage can destroy lives in an instant. Was Darnell's deadly act a reaction to Camille's betrayal, or was it the culmination of a man unraveling under the weight of his own insecurities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story left you speechless, hit that like button and subscribe to Crime Chronicles for more gripping tales that expose the dark truths behind love, lies, and ultimate betrayal.